Welcome to the Mom Evolution. We are so excited to be here today for our very first episode. We want to share a little bit about our stories and how we came to be and why we started a podcast.
Yes, we're so excited and so grateful to have you here with us. This all came to be from us growing from a space of what I would say like emptiness to a space of fulfillment over the last, I want to say 4, even longer years, but 4 for sure. Because 4 is when we first met. We met about 4 years ago. And this whole beautiful thing has stemmed from that meeting, I really feel like, and our connection over our feelings, over our stories, over our life.
Yes. 2 very, very different stories. But similarities. We're both moms. We're both RMTs, or were at one point. Amy's retired. But had a lot in common, and we share a passion for growth, for empowering women, for self-love and self-care. So that's, why we're here.
Yes, and we connected over like loving of natural health. We both have 2 boys. We both, like you said, love to see other women grow and thrive, because I think we came from a space of not feeling that way ourselves. And we met at a public speaking event. We were both speaking at an event, both telling our stories, and Sherysse came on and told her story about being a mother and about the struggles she has gone through and the triumphs she has found and the strength she had found in being a mother of 2 boys, going through a separation, becoming a single parent. It was such a beautiful, empowering story, and I was just like, I need to go talk to this woman, because all of the feelings that you had shared about your story were the same feelings that I was having from my own story, from my own perspective. And I think that was definitely the moment when we were like connected, because I came up to you afterwards. We're like, we need to be friends. And then we realized all the similarities and all the things that was bringing us together. And we knew in that moment that we had to be friends. And I think just a beautiful place to start this podcast is to give everyone a little bit of a background of what that story is and what those feelings were and how we connected over them.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was really my first time sharing my story, especially publicly. I was never really one to really own my story prior to. Throughout the years, I really understood how much courage it takes to owning our story and to really leaning into it and acknowledging it as part of our past that has shaped our future. So, I mean, I like to say that I've been on this journey my whole entire life. But for me, my journey into who I am really started 4 years ago. So shortly after the birth of my second kid, I was struggling, and I had this like overwhelming feeling of like unhappiness and loneliness and overwhelm as well. And I was really struggling. I had all the things that I was said to want, married, 2 kids, a really good career, but there was still a kind of emptiness that was in me that I just couldn't quite put my handle on it. And as my marriage kind of slowly started to break down, and I started to recognize a promise that I had made to myself at a pretty young age, being that my parents were separated, home thing, hey?
It works itself out. It does. It does.
My parents had separated, and when I was 12, I kind of made a promise to myself that when I got married, I was never getting divorced. So 4 years ago, I kind of found myself at this stage where I had to make a choice to break a promise to myself that I made as a young kid. And through a counselor that I had gone and talked to, I kind of opened up to her and said, I didn't actually feel like I had ever opened myself up to the ability to love. I saw my dad crushed at a pretty young, when I was at a pretty young age, and I decided in that moment that I was never going to let anybody hold that power over me. And she handed me a book by Brené Brown called Daring Greatly, and I went home and I read it, and I cried like I hadn't cried. And I was like, if any of you know Brené Brown and Daring Greatly, it's all about shame and vulnerability. And it was in that moment that I was like, I don't think I had ever been vulnerable. I've never allowed people into that space. So that kind of started my whole journey into that personal development and understanding myself, because I was putting everybody else's needs in front of my own and didn't really understand what I needed. And through a space in the last 4 years of being on my own, I've been able to come into this beautiful security and knowing what it is that I want and what fills my cup up and my needs. And it sounds really selfish, and I've been told a number of times that it is selfish, but it actually, I feel like it's the best thing that I can do for not only me but for my boys, because I know when I step into that woman that I am meant to be, that I can be the best mother for them. So, and that's kind of my story and my start of it. I think that's like...
Yeah. And I know as these episodes go along and as we progress and grow and talk about all the topics we know we want to talk about on this, I know our stories are going to come out a bit more. But I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. It's that feeling of selfishness the second we start doing anything for ourselves. And I don't know a woman alive who hasn't felt that in some way or has not been made to feel that in some way, especially when they take a step for something for themselves, in a direction for something for themselves, or even when we purchase things for ourselves.
The mom guilt.
And things like, oh my goodness, it is such a thing that gets put on us. And I feel like it starts at an early age. And so I don't know if any of us can escape it really in any scenario we're in. And I think that's something we can all relate over.
And that was like my thing, is that I found myself single and not having to ask anybody for permission or for validation for the first time in my adult life. Mm-hmm. Actually, first time in my life I'd ever been alone.
Yeah.
I remember that first night and I was like, oh my God, like this is the scariest thing. I was like sleeping with my baseball bat because I was like, I'm so vulnerable right now. I didn't even know.
Oh my gosh, I would have done the same thing.
But it was scary, and now I find security in it. And I love that space. I'm so protective of that space. Probably almost too protective of that space.
No, I don't think so. Because I've seen you, we've known each other for 4 years now, and more intimately and more close as we go along, obviously closer and closer in the last year, as now we've decided to podcast and do all the things together. But no, I have seen the difference in the woman who spoke on stage 4 years ago to now, and it is like night and day.
Yeah.
Like we said, from that space of emptiness, just starting to see that light and starting to see that glow, to now where it's just beaming out of you. Right?
Thanks.
And I think it's so important to know that it takes time, but every step along the way is so worth it.
It is.
And like you said, it started with that book.
And I just kind of fell in love with that process.
Yes.
Fell in love with the process of uncovering who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Fell in love with the process of getting myself a little bit better every single day. Like, I actually wait for the fact. I'm like, ooh, where's my next breakthrough? When am I coming through? What am I working through right now? Like, I thrive on that right now. Like, it's my favorite thing, just to understand myself at a deeper level and what I'm capable of, which is the coolest thing. Like, it gives me like goosebumps to even think about it.
Which is just so amazing because, I mean, if any of you listening are like I was even 4 years ago, 2 years ago, I was never even talking like this. And I wouldn't have even known what that thought process was and what, those things meant about diving into yourself and knowing what like fills your cup as an individual and all those things. It's something I had never even thought about. I was constantly just living day to day, definitely living for others, which is a beautiful thing to be able to do as a mom, as a spouse, as a healthcare practitioner like we are, as, whatever hat it is that you're wearing. But it's rare for us to come at life from a space of looking inward unless it's brought into us from a young age, which I know we hope to do with our children now.
Yeah.
But it took a long time for me to step into that space and even look at it as valuable.
Yeah.
I thought I was fine, right? I think we think we're fine until we have that moment where we realize, you know what? I'm actually not. I'm living in survival mode. I am 100% giving from an empty space. And when you step into it from the opposite, it's completely life-changing, and you never want to go back, and you want to keep growing because, like you said, we are better moms. I know I'm a better spouse. I can give better to others. I know I serve others in a better way now because it's coming from that space of fulfillment instead of me just trying to give from that empty space all the time.
And that's like, I lived my whole life in survival mode.
Yeah.
I didn't know what life was like out of survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you as well, coming from this space of chronic illness, like I fell in love with you just listening to you talk about hormones and sharing your passion for like women's health and the strength and adversity that you've gone through, and even just that acknowledgement to be able to like own your story, own your body, and be that advocate for who you are. Like that's been a strong part of the journey as well, right? You shine so brightly as yourself, and especially when you're sharing your story, because you just have that passion to help whoever is willing to hear you.
Oh, thank you. And that's so funny because when I started this whole journey, it was the opposite. I would talk on hormones. I would talk from a space of anatomy and physiology. We love health that way. We love the body. But I never dove into it from a space of emotion and from a space of this is my story, because I thought, well, who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear about the woes of all the things I have been through and why I know the things that I know? Let's just teach the people what they need to know for their own bodies. But once I started sharing my story, and even, the day we met, we hadn't super gone in like deep into our stories that day on stage, and we've progressed into it ever since. But I know that since sharing the emotion of my story, what I went through, like to me personally and physically, what actually happened, that's when the connections started to be made. That's when people would come up to me and be like, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel the same way and I feel alone. And that's when it like opened wide open for me to start sharing in that way. But yes, I come from a space of chronic illness, an inflammatory condition, endometriosis. It's very hormonally driven. It's a whole thing. And so when I started changing my life, I was in a space of same thing, of just emptiness. I was in survival mode. I call it a space of darkness because I almost wouldn't even allow myself to go into my own body, because I was trying to put on such a face all the time of just, no, I'm a mom. I've got to do this. Like I'm doing this. I've got my practice to run, all of these things. And people barely even knew what I was going through. I got that good at keeping that face on, right? Because I've been dealing with this since I was 14, 15 years old. And what turned it around for me was realizing that I have to be responsible for myself. People were helping me in their own best way, but it wasn't helping me. It wasn't serving me in any way. It took a lot of, being like, you know what, this isn't serving me. Maybe this will. Okay, that didn't serve me. Maybe this will. It was a whole journey that is so worth taking. When you're in a space of chronic pain and chronic illness, we like to live in that space. And it's because we're told that this is our life now. Commonly, that's very told. Well, this is your life. You just have to learn to deal with it. But if you can just keep fighting to find what works best for you as an individual, because we're all individuals, it's worth it. And so I started just advocating for myself, saying what wasn't working, finding stuff that did. And then, we'll get into health on other episodes and stuff, but just stepping into that space and learning that health meant so much more than just not being sick. Health was about what I was feeding my mind, right? And people had talked to me about personal development before, and I'm pretty sure I'm talking like giant eye rolls would have come out of my face because I didn't feel the need to think that way. My life was great also, right? Yes, I had this pain, and yes, I was dealing with this, and I've had surgeries, right? But it was great. I was still able to have my children, which I was told I may never have. Like I was trying so hard to be in a space of gratitude for what I did have, which I was, but I was still dying on the inside. And so learning that my health meant so much more than just what my inside was feeling. It was about my external environment. It was about the people I was spending time with. It became this whole beautiful picture. And then personal development and books and podcasts. You asked me 2.5 years ago, Amy, what podcast do you listen to? I'd be like, what's a podcast? And now here we
I didn't
are.
even know where to find one at the beginning.
I didn't even know. I'm like, is it in my phone? Is that a thing that's just on my phone? Like, I had no idea. And I was like, really? You want me to like not listen to my music that makes me happy during the day to like listen to someone talk? And then I started to, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I could feel my thoughts changing, my behaviors changing into who I actually am.
Yeah. Right?
I say change, but I really mean going back to who I am as an individual and as my individual state of happiness, of joy. And then when I got to go speak on it and stuff, that's my passion. That's my purpose. That's where I feel fulfilled. Like what we're doing now is just talking and helping others from our stories, right? Because like you said, they're so different, but we were both lonely, both overwhelmed. And it's crazy that women feel so lonely because we're all going through the same thing.
And we were really good at wearing a tough exterior.
So good.
And hiding it from the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were in pain physically and I was in pain emotionally.
Yeah.
And it was just not, like, the pain became our identity.
100%.
And we held, like, I used it as a security blanket for a very long time. Because if I just let myself be pain, then I didn't have to really expect much.
And did it make you feel kind of like awesome? Like I was like, I'm so awesome. Do you know what I'm dealing with physically right now? And you don't even know. And I've only had 3.5 hours sleep and I'm crushing my day. Like it kind of gave me this false sense of, I don't know, happiness but it wasn't. It was exhausting. I was exhausted. Yeah. When we, like right before we met and I was, changing my health journey and stuff, I always talk about how I just felt like just a shell of a human. I was barely hanging on. You give, and you give, and you don't even realize because you're pouring out all day and just nothing's coming in. And that's what I struggled with. I was like, everywhere I turn, everybody needs something from me. Yes. And I was like, by the end of the day, I would like collapse into my bed because I had just like it reacted to everything because it was like, you need something, you need something, you need something, you need something, you need something. And then I was like, when do I need something? Yeah. And then you wake up again and do it the next day. And you're just living day by day, moment to moment, because it's so reactive. Yeah. Right? Whereas now I feel like we both really come at our life from a proactive state with thoughts of next week. Yeah. Next month, next year. We have 5-year plans. Like that before to me was not a thing. Not a thing. But it's interesting too, and we'll talk about this in 2 episodes from now. Mm-hmm. But the minute that you start saying, well, I need something, is the minute that a lot of people around you start throwing out the word selfish. Yep. And you have this guilt. And you feel guilty. Like, oh. Like, I remember the first time that I didn't have my kids, and I was like, should I be enjoying this time? Or should I feel guilty that I don't have them? Mm-hmm. What should I do? Mm-hmm. And there was like this tug of war that was going on inside me internally because I couldn't fully enjoy it without guilting and shaming myself into it. Yeah. And it's interesting because continually I like hear this, Alan says this all the time, is what if it's what's best for you is what's best for everybody else. Oh, it's one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in my life. It's literally changed the perspective of how I catch myself even thinking about things now. Yeah. Right? Because I know already from the growth I've had, I'm serving better. I'm showing up better. I'm able to do the things I want to do for my loved ones from a better space. And I know the impact that I can have from continuing to grow myself. And so, yes, that is just such a beautiful saying. And it's one that should be pinned up on every girl's wall. It was really what
allowed me to break this promise that I had made as a little girl. Because I am loyal and I keep my promises. But I didn't like the woman that I was in my relationship. And I didn't like the woman that I was modeling to my kids. And I knew it wasn't just for me, but it was also for them and the men that they could become, but also their future wives and who they would attract one day. And I knew that they deserved the best version of me so that their future wives could have the best version of them. And so I never made that choice from a selfish point. It was a choice that was made because I knew that that was what's best for my boys.
Yes, 100%. It's like when we started investing into my health, I felt guilty, but I also felt guilty every day when I couldn't play with my kids to the extent that I knew I wanted to, when I had to have time in bed, when I had time in recovery from hospital and all of these things, right? So there was guilt on both sides. I was guilty not living my best life and not feeling healthy enough to be the mom I wanted to be. But as soon as I started investing into my health and doing those things, I was like, oh, I should be putting this money towards something else. I should be this. And it's like, no, like my family deserves the best of me. And so do I. Right. And I know that if we just all start coming from that space, and it's a challenge to get there, but mindset matters, right? And what you're filling your mind with matters. And that's our goal for this entire podcast, is just to show you how far we've come from beginning to, I mean, we're not even close to the end. So our goal is to just continue this journey on with our listeners, with whoever decides to come along with us. And I know we're going to talk about and do great things.
Yeah. And to be able to give you guys some action to take away from.
That's right.
Right? And so one of the things that like really resonated with Amy and I was we knew the effect that each other's stories had on ourselves personally. And through our journey, we've had to get more and more in touch with our stories and find a love for the adversity that we've come from.
Yes.
To step into our greatness and to own our greatness, because that is what has the impact in the world around you, because you never know who's out there waiting for your story.
That's right.
So we would like to encourage you to figure out what your story is. And I mean, a lot of us, I said it for a long time. I said, oh, my relationship wasn't like, I don't have a story. Mm-hmm. And like, I had a good childhood. I had blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't have a story, but we all do. Mm-hmm. Every one of us does. Because we're all inside. We struggle with very similar issues. And so that we want to talk about it. We want to normalize it. Instead of us shelling it up and hiding it away from the world, we need to share it, because when we share it, it gives others permission to do the same.
That's right. That's right. And like you said, all these similarities and these feelings that we all take on. But the second someone starts sharing their story, it gives someone else the space to do the same. And we all start to realize that we're coming from the same space. Different stories, same emotions of overwhelm, sadness, loneliness, joy when maybe we feel guilty for that joy. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, we encourage you. I know no one understands me. I'm all alone in this. When really, I mean, we all need jackets.
Yeah.
Capes. We all need capes.
The capes.
Right? Because we're superheroes for taking that all on. But really, what's magic is when we can all come together and share it together and have that impact. Sharing stories has impact. And when you can find what your story is and learn to hold a space of love for it, because yes, our stories, when you dive deep into them, are sad and they're hard and there's a lot of pain. But I know you and I both look back on them now with gratitude, because we wouldn't be where we are without them. We wouldn't be helping other people through our stories without that. Like, I know I went through all my physical trauma, so now I can teach others about how to get over that and how to deal with that and how to help.
One of the things that I've told my patients for years, and one of the same things that I have discovered through my emotional work, is pain is an ultimate catalyst for change.
100%.
It is a beautiful catalyst. So if you allow it to not be a part of your identity, but to find a relationship with it, it can change you and grow you, because there is no growth without pain.
No, it can be a fuel for change.
Yeah.
It can. And so, yeah, we just encourage you to dive into your story, see where those pain points are, and see what it has brought into your life that might be really great.
Yeah.
And then share it with somebody. And if you guys don't have a space or the right people in your life right now to share that with, we welcome you to share it with us. And that's what we're here for. Our goal is to create a beautiful, safe space where we can find courage in our stories and share them together. We have an Instagram page, and that's where we would love to see you.
Yes. We do every Friday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We do Bevies and BS with Amy and Sherysse, where we can just go in and unpack the week. So this is an opportunity that if you want us to talk on something, or you guys have something that you're struggling with, please reach out, join our community, and let us talk about it.
Absolutely. You can interact with us live in that moment, or you can private message us what it is you want us to talk about and you need to hear about, and we can keep it anonymous. But we, are absolutely so excited to create this space on social media for women to come, connect, and grow together.
Yes. And make sure you guys stay tuned for our next week's episode, which is going to be on overwhelm. We're really excited to bring that because that's where we kind of started from. And we want to give a shout out to Kevin and Alan for helping us get this podcast all started with the Next Level University Podcast Solutions. Messed that up.
Nah, it was good. Next Level Podcast Solutions, Kevin and Alan, they are excellent. Their podcast is amazing, and we are so, so grateful.
Coaching and podcasting, we would not be here doing this if it wasn't for them helping us out.
That's right. It was quite the road to get here, so we are so grateful for your time on our first episode. Thank you so much. We look forward to connecting again soon.
Bye.